We just want to tell you about the latest videos we've released on our other channel, Paranormally Listed. Our latest video is about disasters that were predicted. In one case, several people foresaw one of the worst air disasters in American history in their dreams, but yet no one could stop it. The video we released before that is about haunted high schools, which includes the story of a jealous member of the marching band who seems doomed to spend the rest of eternity in the school. And then there's 3 haunted murder houses, where we look at 3 homes where someone was brutally murdered and their ghosts may still linger. You can find a link to Paranormally Listed in the description box below, and we'll have a link to the channel in all 3 videos at the end of this video. And now, we want to bring you word from our amazing sponsor, Magellan TV. Whenever I get bored, I check out Magellan TV's new releases section because I always find something interesting to watch. This time, I came across a really good series called Detectives, My Killer Cases. In each episode, they examine some of the most infamous cases in the United Kingdom. The lead investigator on each case is interviewed, and they give intimate details about the cases. If you like true crime stories where they go into a lot of detail but have great storytelling as well, Detectives, My Killer Cases will blow you away. It's one of the best series I've seen in a while, and this is saying a lot because Magellan TV has a ton of great true crime series. Not to mention, they have other fantastic documentaries in other genres like nature, science, and biography. Magellan TV has over 3,000 documentaries, so no matter what you're interested in, there's probably a documentary that you'll enjoy. You should check out Magellan TV today because they have a great offer for criminally listed viewers. They are offering our viewers 30 days of free service. To get this amazing offer, just go to try.magellantv.com/criminallylisted. Please check out Magellan TV today because you'll find something great to watch and you'll be supporting Criminally Listed in the process. Number 3. Marco Badali. Marco Badali was a 48-year-old man from Vignola, Medina, Italy. Badali was an electrical engineer and he had 2 children who were 6 and 9. His favorite hobby was motocross racing. Badali had many friends who shared the same passion. They belonged to the Bracco Lupi Motorcycle Club. The group of riders would race across the Italian countryside. On April 7th, Badali and his friends were riding in the Apennine Mountains. The 14-member club was celebrating one of the members buying a new bike. Their finish point was a local restaurant where they were going to have lunch. Badali knew the route best, so he led the pack on his Yamaha 450. Riding at 60 miles per hour, his friends saw him hit something and then fly off his bike. The rider behind Badali had to brake to avoid crashing into him. His friends rushed to his aid. When they got to him, Badali was bleeding heavily. A piece of piano wire strung between 2 trees had cut his throat. The wire was tied across the fence about 5 feet across and high enough to catch someone riding a bike. Badali's friends tried their best to save him, but the cut was too deep. Some news reports say that he was decapitated. A helicopter came to Badali's rescue, but it was too late. 48-year-old Marco Badali died in his friend's arms. Authorities investigated the scene. They noted that the wire looked brand new and there were no traces of rust on it. Earlier that day, a horseback rider rode that same path. They did not notice the wire there. One of the witnesses said it was placed deliberately there to kill somebody. Fernando Barbieri, a friend of the victim, said, "We walked the course the night before and the wire was not there. Someone put it there deliberately. It's unbelievable. Marco was killed in front of us." The riders believed a farmer strung up the wire to deter people from trespassing on his land. Tensions between landowners and the riders were always high. However, Badali and his friends were always respectful of property owners. They avoided taped and chained off areas. Badali was also known to dress up as Santa Claus and hand out gifts to the landowners. As the police investigated the crime, they quickly ruled out the landowner as a suspect. Early reports suggested that one of the tenants of the landowner was responsible for hanging the wire, but the suspect was never registered with the prosecution's office. The police did arrest a 60-year-old caretaker of a nearby retirement village. The village residents complained of the loud noises from the riders. The caretaker wanted to stop that. The suspect's name was never publicly released. To honor their friend, Vidali's friends posted some of his poems. Vidali enjoyed writing about wolves. He identified with them as they could run through the woods and they were free. Number 2. James Garrity. James Garrity was born in the early 1960s and he was put up for adoption. Dolores and Ralph Garrity adopted him. The Garritys also adopted his brother Tom. They grew up in Nortonville, Kansas. Garrity attended Jefferson County North High School, but he didn't graduate. After dropping out, he enlisted in the Marines. At some point, he became a father to his son. He had several brushes with the law and served some time in the Shawnee County Prison. At some point, Garrity moved to Topeka, Kansas. In early 2011, he routinely picked up his Social Security payments at his attorney's office. But sometime in March 2011, he stopped picking up his checks, so his attorney reported him missing. James Garrity was last seen alive on March 3, 2011. The police had very little information to go on. What they did know was around the time James Garrity went missing, he was planning on moving to Carbondale, Kansas to live with a man named James Paul Harris. But the police didn't make any progress on the case for over a year. Then on March 24, 2012, a woman named Shirley Johnson was hunting for mushrooms on the property she lived on in rural Carbondale. She found something odd in the grass. Initially, she thought it was a piece of a soccer ball. She brought the object into the house. John Harris, who owned the land, looked at the object. He immediately recognized it as part of a human skull, so he called the police. The police combed the property for over 10 hours. They drained 2 ponds and examined a burn pile. They found numerous bones and bone fragments. The police thought that the remains might belong to James Garrity. When James went missing, he was planning on moving in with a man named James Paul Harris. The remains were found on Harris's father's property. Forensic investigators tested the skull fragments and created a DNA profile. James Garrity's brother, Tom, offered to help by giving a sample of his DNA. The problem was that they were adopted brothers, so they didn't share the same DNA. But Tom had an idea. He got hairs from James' baby book. Using those hairs, the police confirmed that the remains belonged to 49-year-old James Garrity. In October 2013, James Harris was charged with premeditated first-degree murder. At the time, Harris was in a federal prison in Texas for an unrelated firearms possession felony. When James Garrity was presumably murdered, Harris was living in an apartment on his father's property with his girlfriend, Bobby Williams. Williams said that Harris was fascinated with voodoo and he practiced it. He had a cloth voodoo doll that hung from their apartment ceiling. Harris named the doll Jimbo, Bob on the Hill, and poor Jim Belinsky. When searching the apartment, police found voodoo artifacts with pictures of James Garrity on them. Bobby Williams told the police that Harris shot James Garrity in the stomach. He kept him alive for 2 days, torturing him. He then decapitated James Garrity with a guitar string. Hoping to dispose of the body, Harris put his arms, legs, and torso in a barrel with some solution. This was used to break down the body even more. In a more sinister twist, Harris kept James Garrity's head in a canvas bag. He frequently talked to the head and used it in voodoo rituals. James Harris's trial for first-degree murder began in June 2014, but then he pleaded no contest to involuntary manslaughter. Osage County Attorney Brandon Jones said it was going to be a tough case to prosecute because there were problems with the case. For example, the police never recovered the rest of James Garrity's body, nor did they recover the murder weapon. Also, some of the prosecution witnesses were not available for the trial. Then there were credibility issues with Harris's girlfriend, Bobby Williams. During the trial, Williams was asked if her past drug use could impair her memory. She admitted to only taking medication for depression. When asked about the voodoo doll, Williams became agitated. She burst out with profanity-laced answers. The court held her in contempt and fined her $100. James Paul Harris was sentenced to 4 years and 2 months in prison. The sentence outraged the members of James Garrity's family. His brother Tom called the sentence a joke. He said, "You can murder somebody and get out in 50 months? What's that tell everybody on the wrong side of the law?" Online records show that James Harris was released in 2017. A short time later, he was arrested again. This time, it was for a traffic violation. The police found drugs, a shotgun, and fireworks in his car. It appears he has stayed out of legal trouble since then. Number 1. Rufina Stevens. In 1990, Rufina Stevens was tired of the rising crime in her Los Angeles, California neighborhood. The 47-year-old Pacific Bell engineering aide had lived in a green bungalow near the Burbank airport for almost 21 years. As a divorced mother of 2 daughters, she wanted to make a difference in her community, so she became active in the Neighborhood Watch. Her strong anti-crime stance became well known in her neighborhood. She would often paint over graffiti and scold people she caught committing crimes. Her 2 daughters worried that this might put her life in danger. They pleaded with her not to do things like go out grocery shopping alone at night. She assured her daughters that she would be fine. Tragically, the night they warned her to be careful was the last night they saw her alive. On the morning of February 9, 1990, 47-year-old Rufina Stevens was found dead. Her mangled, naked body was found face down on a set of South Pacific Railroad tracks after it had been run over by a train. Her clothes were found nearby, but they didn't hold any clues as to who killed her. The medical examiner determined that she had been strangled with a thin piece of wire. It was most likely a piano wire. She had also been raped. One clue that the police found was a footprint near her body. A casting of the footprint was made. The semen from the rape was sent for DNA testing. Rufina's daughters thought she was killed because of her anti-crime crusade. The police weren't as sure. The police interviewed Rufina's ex-husband, William Edward Stevens. William and Rufina divorced 3 years prior. William was an abusive husband, so Rufina got restraining orders against him. William had also served a prison sentence for molesting their youngest daughter. He was paroled, but he was sent back to prison twice for violating the terms of his parole. Since getting divorced, William had threatened his wife many times. He had even threatened her in front of their daughters. When police questioned William about his ex-wife's murder, he maintained that he was sleeping at the time. Yet, he gave them information that only the killer would know. In these Freudian slips, William told the police that Rufina was strangled before she was struck by the train. He also admitted to the police that he told his daughters he thought about killing their mother. He even told one of them that he would use piano wire to kill her because it couldn't be traced like a gun or a knife. The police searched the house where William was renting a room. It had a piano and 3 wires were missing. The police were convinced that William Stevens had murdered his ex-wife. But there were problems with the case. The footprint found near the body did not match William's foot. The DNA also didn't match William. No match to the DNA was found. The police were convinced that William Stevens had murdered his ex-wife. Nevertheless, William was charged with murder and he went to trial in June 1993. The prosecution presented an unusual theory. On the night Rufina was murdered, she took the bus to the grocery store. William and an accomplice, who was never identified, confronted Rufina. William and his accomplice beat Rufina, then the accomplice raped her. Then William strangled her with piano wire. Then either William or just the accomplice dumped her body on the tracks. The district attorney pointed out that William knew Rufina had been strangled, even though this was not public information. Also, she was strangled with piano wire, and this is the very same object William told his daughter he would use if he killed her. The district attorney also pointed out that William was an abusive husband who had threatened to kill Rufina several times. A jailhouse informant also testified, and he said that William had confessed to him. Then finally, William was a convicted child molester who abused his own daughter. The prosecution said that the motive was that William had finally lost ultimate control over Rufina. The defense argued that the prosecution's theory was bad fiction. They did admit that William was a convicted child molester and he had threatened to kill Rufina. But the facts were there was no evidence to prove that he killed her. The prosecution was using William's past to make him look like a monster. And yes, while he had done some horrible things, it did not make him a murderer. Also, the most significant thing that William told the police that if he were to kill Rufina, he would use a piano wire. The defense hired a private pathologist to testify. The pathologist claimed that Rufina's injuries were not caused by a piano wire, but by a smaller tool. One of Rufina's neighbors testified that she had hired a transient to work around her home. On the day of the murder, she left him with a wire survival saw to cut tile. The next day, the transient disappeared along with the wire saw. William Stevens' trial lasted 2 months and then the jury deliberated for 3 days. William Stevens was found guilty of first-degree murder. William Stevens was sentenced to life without parole. A search of the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation does not indicate where William Stevens is incarcerated. Since he was serving life without parole, he most likely died in prison, and that information was not made public. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Please don't forget to check out our new channel, Paranormally Listed. There's a link on the screen now, and there's a link in the description box below this video. Well, that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.